Hi friends! I'm so excited you're here because I'll be talking about all the books I read in September. I had an awesome reading month, so let's just get right into it. Starting off my month, I read some clown books for Kelsey's Carnival Readathon over on her Patreon. I will link her channel down below and her Patreon. It was so much fun. It actually went for 2 weeks, but I only did a week where I went full clown. If you did not see that vlog, the beginning is pretty fun, I feel like. So I'll leave that linked in the description box down below where I talk about these books more in detail. But yeah, let's get right into it. So the first book I ended up reading was a short story that was Goons in Grease Paint by Christopher Robertson. This is the prequel to Cotton Candy Massacre, and I actually ended up reading oops, I just knocked over all my books. The sequel to Cotton Candy Massacre Part Toots. I had a blast with both of these. They were a ton of fun, and it was fun to read like the prequel and the sequel like around the same time. And yeah, I ended up giving, I think the prequel like 4 stars and then the sequel 5 stars. I had a blast with this. This is more of like a Chuck E. Cheese style clown situation. And then I listened to Something This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury, and I really enjoyed this. It was really atmospheric, and I feel like some of the subjects in this, I think this is a middle grade. I feel like the subject for middle grade was really interesting choices. Like there's a lot about aging in this, and I think that's like a really interesting topic about like to read as a 12-year-old. You're like, okay. But yeah, overall I really enjoyed it and gave it 4 stars. And then I read Most Wanted by R.L. Stine, or Most Wanted. The Most Wanted series, The Nightmare on Clown Street by R.L. Stine. This was so fun. I had a blast with it, and I read it very quickly, of course, because it's like a little middle grade as well. And I ended up reading The Circus of Hungry Clowns by Cesar Burrell. I had a lot of fun with this one. It is available on KU. It's really short. I think it's 80 pages. And I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Then I read I Found a Circus Tent Behind My House in the Woods by Ben Farthing. I did like this one at the beginning, and I do like the author's note at the end, but it was so repetitive. This dude was like, I'm traumatizing my kid, or my kid's being traumatized. Okay, like this is a novella. Like you only need to say that like twice at the most. I feel like every sentence he was like, oh my gosh, I'm traumatizing my kid. And it's like, come on, dude, like let's get over it. Also, kids are super resilient. Like he'll be fine. He'll be scared of clowns, but that's it. Oh, so I ended up giving it 3 stars. Then I did a reread of Joyland by Stephen King, and I feel like I liked this one when I first read it. I mean, I still enjoyed it. It's more of a coming of age story set at a carnival during summer, but it was kind of boring for me, so I ended up giving it 3 stars. And I read Funfair by Sam West. This is an extreme novella, and I ended up, I think I gave this like 3.5 stars or 3 star. And then one of my favorite books I read in that vlog was Nightmare Alley by William Lindsay Gresham. This is from the 1940s, this book, so it's very like 1940s dialogue in it. It's like, you got 2 nickels, you can buy a whole pie, you know, that situation. So it took a minute to get used to because I listened to this from Libby, but after that I was very much in the story. I was very much with the main character of the story. It is more literary fiction, or it is literary fiction, but I feel like the story is so good and it's so sad and depressing, and there's like just that little bit of nihilism at the end, and yeah, it was up Katrina's alley. So I ended up giving it 5 stars. Then I ended that vlog with Brian's Birthday Bloodbath by Brian G. Barry. I always want to just say Birthday Bloodbath for some reason for that title. I read this on an ebook. It is another novella, and oh boy, this is extreme. So Brian G. Barry, I read one of his books for was it Garb-August, or might have been before Garb-August, and it was like fun. Snow Shark I read. It was like a fun, cheesy time. I went into this one thinking that until of course I got, this is extreme, you know, because this is part of his slasher series. The cheesy stuff is a part of like his VHS series or some trash VHS series. So this is very extreme. It's very gross, very disturbing. Right off the bat, there's horrific stuff happening throughout this book. Oh, it was so gross. Yeah, I think I ended up giving it 3 stars though, because it did read very quickly, and you were kind of like, it's one of those things where you can't look away, you know, like you can't look away from the horror. So I felt that way about this one. And the next book I ended up reading is also a clown book, but I did not read it during that vlog. I got my loan in afterwards from Libby, and that is There's No Way I Die Tonight by Lisa Springler. I had an absolute blast with this one. It was so much fun. It's a killer clown book set on Halloween. There's lots of fun costumes, there's lots of fun decorations, the atmosphere is magnificent. I will say my only thing for not giving this book 5 stars is some of the commentary towards the end. I feel like it was a bit mixed. It didn't feel like the message was quite there. It felt a bit, I guess, fumbled, like you fumbled that a little bit, but overall, the violence in this I was very surprised by because it is a YA book. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I love the cover too. And this is actually my friend Sav's from Riveting Reads book club pick for October, so definitely check it out. It's set on Halloween. It's super fun for her Lights Out book club, and I'll link her channel down below so you can keep posted. And in that new horror reading vlog too, I believe I talked about the Handyman Method by Nick Cutter and Andrew something. I will never remember this other author's name. But I talked about that at the beginning of that vlog because I did read this at the beginning of the month. It was like that kind of switch over that I listened to. I did not like this one. I think it was trying to be The Shining, but like with Black Mirror elements, like technology elements. And I did like those parts of this story. But the overall messaging was like, oh, misogyny's bad, but I feel like it just didn't come through at all. I think it just ended up being misogynistic without having, like, I don't know. I feel like this one was fumbled too, you know. It was missed. And there's some animal cruelty in this with the turtle, and I felt like this was Nick Cutter being like, okay, you guys didn't like the turtle stuff in the troop, so I'm gonna put an even more horrific turtle thing in my book. Like, it just felt rude. And it's for no reason. So, yeah. I gave this one, I think I'm leaning towards a 1.5, but I'll roll it up to 2. That vlog, I ended up reading That Night in the Woods by Christopher Triana. I was not a fan of this one. It might have been the format though that I was reading it. I was reading it on a PDF form rather than an ebook. And I do complain about that in the vlog, but it was a slow book. This is a slow book. It's not an extreme horror. It's just a regular horror. And oh boy, it was very slow, and it was kind of predictable, but what it ended up being was like one of my favorite things in horror. So I was kind of torn about it, but overall I ended up giving it 2 stars. And then I read Boys in the Valley by Philip Fracassi. This is such a great isolated setting book, like wintry, cold book. Like, you felt the coldness these boys were experiencing. This is a possession story, in a way, evil kid story, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. until the ending. Some stuff goes down that I wasn't a huge fan of, but I don't think it really affected the story. I just wish Philip Percossi like chose something a little different. But overall, it was great. It was scary. And you really feel for these boys in this book. And I ended up giving it 4 stars. Next book I ended up reading in that vlog was Rouge by Mona Awad. I absolutely loved this. I gave it 5 stars. It is so trippy, so weird. It is more literary and it's character driven. We're only in the main character's head, and it was a blast. More fairy tale like Wizard of Oz vibes throughout, but in this great like coastal California setting. There's a weird health spa situation. People are acting weird. We might have a little bit of an unreliable narrator going on. Just like lots of weird stuff going on, while at the same time having some commentary on the beauty industry and like beauty standards of that women are held to. So yeah, it was really interesting and weird. Oh my god, I loved the ending so much, and I loved just how it was executed. It was just executed so well, and yeah, it was fantastic. I love Rouge. And then for that vlog too, I read Midnight Showing by Megan Shepherd. This is the second book in the Malice House Compendium, and it was a blast. So in the first Malice House book, the main character is actually a recapper for like old obscure like horror movies, and that was like kind of one of the fun things in Malice House. This one goes into like the movie stuff that she does, and you get snippets of like a really old creepy movie from the 40s, like little cuts at the beginning of each chapter, and I was like really into that. Overall, this felt very cozy and scary and weird, like a weird mystery to unravel. Like Malice House, there is something very cozy about these 2 books are cozy horror to me. I don't know if they technically are, but to me, there's something very like comforting about these books, and I can't tell you why. But overall, I really did enjoy it, but I did feel like there's a little bit of a pacing issue with this one, where Malice House is just like kind of like a whirlwind. This one was a little bit slower, so I ended up giving it 4 stars. So I randomly read this book, Migrations by Charlotte McConaughey. This is a literary fiction book, I believe. It might have some sci-fi elements in it because it does take place in a world where there are no more animals, or almost all the animals are extinct. Like even like dogs and lizards and stuff, they're all gone. But there's some birds left and there's some fish left. And we're following a woman who is looking for like this particular bird, and she's trying to get her way onto like a fishing boat, but at the same time she's like, fishing's bad. So it's weird. I was like, this is so weird, but also she's like haunted by her past, so you're getting like stuff from her past and like her current situation on a boat. It was interesting. It felt kind of like an episode of a TV show you'd watch, not necessarily Black Mirror, but like something else with like sci-fi elements in it. And yeah, I enjoyed it. I think it was interesting, and I gave it 4 stars. Next book I read was The Exorcist House by Nick Roberts, for my friend Amy from Amy Newell's book club pick for October. And boy oh boy, this was a fun one. This has a great opening. It was like a lot of fun. It was very cinematic throughout. It did feel like you're watching like a show or TV. But overall, it doesn't really stick out either and stuff. I really liked the ending. The ending is like right up my alley. And yeah, I just enjoyed it. I think I'm leaning towards a 3.5. I'll roll up to 4 on Goodreads. I ended up reading The Nightmare Man by J.H. Market. I don't know what I was gonna say there. This was a lot of fun too. I feel like the Exorcist house and this book have similarities, but they're very different. But they're overall like the same vibe, like pretty cinematic, like really entertaining. Horror stuff happens in those. This one is more of like a dream thing going on right in the Nightmare Man. And what it ends up being, I thought was really interesting, like the whole reveal and everything, but the mystery throughout was fun for me. It kept me like engaged, and yeah, I had a lot of fun with it, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. And then I ended up reading Theme Music by T. Marie Vandelli. This is a thriller that has been going around Book Talk, I feel like, more, well, and Bookstagram. And I was like, okay, let me check this out because I'm intrigued. I physically read this one, so it took me a day, no, and maybe a little bit more than a day, but it did read very fast. So we follow our main character moved back into the house where her dad killed the rest of her family with an axe when she was a baby, but she was spared. She moves back into the house. Some weird stuff is happening. Is it ghost or is it something else? And then also she starts to dive into like the actual case itself, which I was really into. Also, this takes place in Virginia. It takes place in the Nova area of Virginia, and you wouldn't think like a haunted house story would be in the suburbs of Nova. So that was pretty fun to read. It actually is the stop. It's Francovia. It's the metro stop that it's like the first one you can take into DC. Like, I only know that because that's like, I'm from that area, so I was like, oh yeah, I could just like take the train to DC or whatever. Not when I was skipping school or anything. But yeah, so that brought back some fun memories of the location of this one. It's very twisty-turny, a bit predictable, and I feel like there are some plot holes in this one, and there's some really frustrating moments back and forth on phones, that I was just like, okay, like, let's go. But overall, it was a fun time, and I did read it so fast, and I'm giving it 4 stars. So now we are in the week of weird, which I feel like I totally failed at. I did not read a ton for it. I didn't vlog for it, but I managed to read Weird Tales, which this is a short story collection, and my favorite short story was from Victor Lavelle. I think it was the first one. That one was my favorite. I forget the other authors, and I don't even really remember a ton of the other short stories, but yeah, his story was the best one, and I gave this 3 stars. The next book I ended up listening to was Wild Spaces by C.L. Cooney. As you can tell, there's a lot of tentacle action on this cover. This was beautiful. This is a beautiful book. I loved the message in this book. It's very short. I think it's only 200 pages, and I flew through it. It's available on Scribd, and if you like Lovecraftian horror, you'll like this one a lot. It was very weird, but not too weird, you know. But I ended up giving it 5 stars just because I really liked the whole message at the end of it. I was like, yes, 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 S.L. Cooney. Then I ended up reading 3 of the creature feature collection. I read Ankle Snatcher by Grady Hendrix, I read The Pram by Joe Hill, and I read It Waits in the Woods by Josh Mallerman. These are a lot of fun. The audio is included with the Kindle Unlimited subscription, so I just listened to these. And I will say, out of these 3, my favorite was The Pram. It was vicious. It was a vicious little book, a little grief horror there going on. And yeah, I absolutely had a blast with it. I'm having a lot of fun with these, or I had a lot of fun with these 3, and I'm saving the other 3 for October, so I'm excited to read the next 3. Before I forget, I feel like this would fit into like a Week of Weird theme, but I didn't read it for that. I actually buddy read this with Michelle from Michelle's library, and that is The Most Precious Substance by Sarah Gran. I read this very quickly as well. We buddy read it, and it was a lot of fun to buddy read. It was kind of predictable. I was like, okay, they're gonna end up, you know, hooking up, right? Because this whole book is about sex magic. Yep, some stuff goes down, and I just realized, I just had like an epiphany about the cover. I know why there's water on it. Oh. I am dying. But yeah, it was like a fun little like traveling little with romance situation. I don't want to say Eat, Pray, Love. I think I did tell Michelle I was like Eat, Pray, Sex Magic, you know. Like, she's kidding. But the whole book seller, book collector, like rare book stuff was really interesting actually, because I mean, we have a little collection of rare books, but I mean, nothing like that. But it's fun to like be honed in like eyeing those, or like seeing those out and being like, this is valuable when somebody thinks it's junk, you know? Like, that's interesting. That is a superpower without Googling everything or scanning a barcode. So yeah, I had a blast. I highly suggest it. I'm embarrassed now about the cover of this though, but I gave it 4 stars. It was a lot of fun. Switching gears, like a U-turn completely, I read The Ressurrectionist by Rath James White. I would consider this weird as well, and disgusting. This is extreme horror. This is about a guy who can resurrect people with his breath, and he meets his new neighbor he's obsessed with, so he decides to do this to his neighbor and her husband, and the neighbor knows immediately something's up. It's just so gross. It's disgusting. I actually talk about this book in my Hollow Weekend reading blog, because I was technically still reading this one for September when we did kickoff sprints. But yeah, it was so gross, but the ending was so good. I was like, yes! So I ended up giving it 4 stars. And then finally, my book club pick for September was Mouthful of Ashes by Brianna Morgan. And I was joined by Mindy from Mindy's Reading Journey for that. And I'll link her channel down below and the live show linked down below, so you can check out all of our fun thoughts. We actually just ended up talking about some fun vampire stuff, vampire movies, and like our favorite vampires in general, because this is a bit of a Lost Boy homage. I mean, it is a Lost Boy homage. And yeah, I ended up giving it like more of like a 3-star. Didn't blow me away. The beginning is really brutal. I would look up some content warnings for this one. The whole book is not brutal, but the beginning is. So yeah, this was a fun one if you're looking for like an end of summer carnival book as well. So there you have it. Those were all the books I read in September. Let me know what was some of your favorite reads in September, and I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Bye!